Good morning, everyone. My name is Andrew Strawn. I'm the Inspector of the Compliance Commission. On behalf of the competent authority for AEOI, welcome to this webinar on FATCA CRS and CBC AEOI reporting. This briefing will outline how to effectively use the Bahamas FATCA CRS and CBC Automatic Exchange of Information reporting portal and suggest best practices to facilitate reporting. Note that this webinar does not cover questions related to reporting obligations and other related matters and is on the portal reporting procedures only. The AEOI portal user guides, videos on how to submit filings, data preparation, guidance notes, legislation, partner jurisdiction lists, login links, other information is posted on the international tax website www.taxreporting.finance.gov.bs. If there are any queries after the meeting, kindly submit to the emails helpdesk@taxreporting.finance.gov.bs or information@taxreporting.finance.gov.bs. Please switch off your cameras and microphones. There will be a question and answer period where you can enter questions into the chat. And for our live audience, you can raise your hand here in the meeting room, in the training room, where we're situated here at Ponciana House. And they will be answered at the end of the session. We'll hold the questions until the end. The Bahamas utilizes an AEOI solution provided by Regnology, a world leader in AEOI software solutions, keeping pace with changes in OECD's AEOI through continuous upgrades. I now welcome Mr. Alan Joyce from Regnology.
Morning, everyone. Thank you, Andrew, for that introduction. So my name is Alan Joyce. I've been working with Regnology for over 7.5 years. I've delivered a number of these webinars to Bahamas and other competent authorities throughout the world. This is my first time in person, so I'm definitely looking forward to this session. For those, particularly if you're online, Andrew has gone through some guidelines. I'll put them up on the screen as well. If I'm talking too quickly with my Irish accent, put up your hand and stop me. I won't be insulted, okay? So, just some guidelines, as Andrew's gone through most of them, but the most important one is that we will answer the questions at the end. The actual demo of the software will probably take about 1.5 to 2 hours, something in that region. So there'll be lots of time at the end. So if you have questions, put up the hand and we can ask. For anybody who's online, enter the questions in the chat and we'll go through them as well on the screen. And for the benefit of the people here, you'll be able to see what's happening with those questions as well, okay? If anybody wants to come up and ask questions afterwards, that's absolutely no problem at all. So just in terms of an agenda and what we're going to cover. So first thing we're going to take a look at is the enrollment. So we're going to do a number of different enrollments. So we're going to enroll as a regular reporting entity, but also how to enroll as a TVT. So we're going to take a look at both of them. We're then going to take a look at what happens when you first log in and if you want to create secondary users in the system, okay? We're also going to then move on to taking a look at how to create and submit manual CRS filing. We're going to take a look at CRS XML filings. We're going to take a look at how to create and submit FATCA filings, to change a reporting entity information. So these are a number of filings that are available within the system. So we're going to take a look at all these filings during the course of the actual demonstration. How do you amend data? So in the CRS filing, if it's already submitted, how do you go and amend that data if a change needs to be submitted as well? So we will take a break for about 10-15 minutes in the middle. We're also going to take a look at creating and submitting a CRS file summary, working with the document library. We'll then move on to CBC, so the public enrollment involved for that. We're going to take a look at the Article 3 notification, the creation and submission of the CBC XML filings. We're going to take a look at the change of a primary user, and also in terms of a FATCA and nil filing as well. So this is what the plan is. We're going to cover all of this during the session. As I said, if you have questions, we'll leave it at the end, so maybe just make a note, and we'll just give everybody an opportunity to speak at the end. So just in terms of the enrollment, so it's not going to be all by PowerPoint, just in case you're wondering. So I'll have a couple of slides, and then I'll be really using the actual application and the solution. So first thing is that every reporting entity has to complete the enrollment form to get access to the system. Links to that enrollment page, they should be accessible via the relevant tax authority website. The most important point is the last one. So if you're already enrolled into the system for CRS and you now need to report for CBC, do not do another enrollment, okay? There is a specific filing, and I will show you what to do, called the change of reporting obligations. So if you're already in the system, whether it's for FATCA, CRS, CBC, and you need to start reporting on another module, okay, do not do another enrollment. There is another way around that. So, and I'll deal with that when we're actually dealing with the enrollments and with the CBC as well. So I'm actually going to exit this presentation for a second. So just bear with me, and I'm going to jump into the application. So this is what the enrollment form is going to take a look at. I think for people at the back, hopefully you can see the screen. I know there's multiple screens around. I've zoomed in a little bit already. So you have to complete all these mandatory fields, which are indicated by the red asterisks here. So I'm just going to add in one here, and then you choose the entity type. So you can see there's different entity types available in the drop down. You select whichever one is relevant, and then you choose the reporting type. So in this case, if I wanted to report for CRS, FATCA, and CBC, you can see there, once you choose CRS, you can click Add, and then you can choose FATCA, click Add, and then you can choose CBC. If I picked one and I didn't want it by mistake, I can click Delete on the right-hand side, and that just removes it. So this is how you can choose the reporting types in the initial enrollment form. Now, here, we're going to put in a GIN, okay, so particularly if you need it for FATCA. Now, I'm going to just adjust this a little bit. And then we put in our fiscal year end, and then you see the address. So again, we have our red asterisks. So just add in an address here. Pick our country. Bahamas. And again, you can see what's regarded as a mandatory field. Now, I'm only just adding in some extra things here. Now, for every entity that's going to be using the system, they have to have a primary user, okay? So here, we're just going to populate these fields here. You can see these are all mandatory. I'm going to use my own details here just for the purpose of the demonstration. So let's add in some numbers, and we'll add in the position as well. Now you can see once we have the details in, we now have to add some requested documentation. So here I'm going to add in a letter signed by director, click upload, and then I'm just going to use a random PDF here. If I wanted to upload more information, I can click add, and then I can select the option, and I could add another document if necessary there. Okay, so I could click upload. Now, just for the purpose of the demonstration, though, I'm just going to use one just to make it simple. So once that's in, we just click submit, and that submits that enrollment to the competent authority. And what happens is that it's automatically approved. That primary user will receive an email with a link to the portal. Okay. Glad to see that screen. So with a link to the portal, and it'll give them their username and it gives them their temporary password. So they're going to see something roughly like this. Okay, so you'll see there, you'll get a temporary password. You see there, you get the login details and you get the link to the portal as well. And when you log in, you have to change your password straight away. Okay, so that's only a temporary password that you use once as soon as you log in, and then you change instantly from there. Okay, so that's the enrollment for just a regular, let's say, a reporting entity. Now, I'll do the enrollment for the TDT in a minute. Okay, so once you actually log into the system, oh, hang on, I think someone came off mute there. Just bear with me, everybody. Yeah, just mute it. Everybody else there. Okay, so I'm going to log in to the portal here. So just bear with me, if there's a little bit of a time delay. I'm using VMs that are based in Dublin, so there could be a slight time delay here, but that looks okay. Now, I know this is actually slightly different for someone who's using it for the very first time, because when you log in, you change your password, and then you log in and you can see the entity you're reporting for. But in my case, I'm reporting for multiple entities, which I know can be the case here as well. So if that's the case, so you can select the entity that you're actually reporting on. So I should see here Snap Investments. So if I click here, click log in, and that logs me into the portal. But more importantly, in this example, what will happen is that I'm now going to be reporting for Snap Investments. If you see up here, Snap Investments. Now, if you're wondering why I have 3 dots and why things look a little bit distorted, it is totally because of the zoom of the browser. So just to make the screen look a little bit bigger, that's all. Okay, so just zoom back in so everybody in the room should be able to see it quite simply. Now, let's say I'm going to open up another tab here. So just bear with me a second, folks. I'm just going to open up another enrollment form here. So we want to enroll for a TDT. So I'm going to let that page just load up. So if you're loading or if you're enrolling for a TDT, there already has to be an FI in the system for that TDT. Okay. And you will need some of those details for the FI to enroll for the TDT. Okay. So if you see here, let's say you're already reporting for an FI and you now need to enroll a TDT. Okay. It's much better if you're actually logged into the portal. Okay. In the portal, if I go to see reporting entity management here. So if I go there, what this should show is essentially a corporate profile. It should show me my details. So you see here the reporting entity profile here. So I'm going to click on that. And I'll show you the details that we're going to need in a minute. So I'm going to go back to the enrollment form. So let's say at this time, okay, we're reporting for a TDT. So just put in trusts there. Okay. Entity type, you see the option TDT down at the end here. So we're going to select that option, and then the reporting type, we'll just put in a CRS here. So if I wanted to, I could put in a GIN. Okay. Now I'm going to put in the year or the fiscal year end, but notice this time the trustee FI name, okay, and the trustee FI identification number. These 2 fields are now active, and the reason they're active is because we selected a trustee document to trust. So if I select a depository, have a look at these 2 fields. See the way they're grayed out. So as soon as you select a TDT, these fields become active. So what you end up having to do is, if I go back to the other tab, this is why it's handy, or I'd recommend that you actually would have two tabs open. You have one with the portal, where you can see the reporting entity profile, and the second one for the enrollment. So here, I put in my reporting entity name, you see there, and then I can put in the number as well. See there? So I can take that one back into the enrollment form and paste it in. So when you're doing the TDT, you must include those details. But this is where you get the details. When you log into the portal as the FI, you can see the entity name and you can see the ID here as well. They are the two fields that you need when you're actually enrolling for a TDT. So again, I'm just going to enter in some details here. Complete any of these mandatory fields just to speed it up. So just bear with me. We'll just complete this form so we can have the trust added as well. So again, any of these mandatory fields, and we'll just upload another random document in this case. Yeah. So there's the enrollment. This is the one difference for a TDT. As soon as you select the entity type, these two fields become active. You go to your profile for the FI and you copy in, or you can just write them in, back into this form here. Once all that is in, you click submit, and that submits the form to the competent authority where it's automatically approved. Okay. And then what happens is that the entity user or the primary user will receive an email saying you've now been assigned access to this particular entity. So you're probably going to see something like this. Okay, so you can see here, assigned access to the entity. Okay, you can see you've already been assigned access to Snap Investments. So if that primary user, once they're already in the system, they don't get another email with temporary password, they get an email just saying that you're now being assigned access to another entity in the system. So when you log in the drop-down, you're going to see that new entity that you have access to as well. Okay. Okay. So that's how you do the enrollment. The next thing we're going to take a look at is just when you log in, okay, and just some basic details before we start creating any sort of returns in the system or filings in the system. So initially, when you log in, if you wanted to see your own details, if you see over here in the top right hand corner, you can see view or edit my details. If we click there, I'm not going to change anything here, but I'm just going to show you some of the information. Just bear with me a little bit. Yeah. So you can see here, if you wanted to, you could change the details here. You can expand, and you can see all the entities that you're assigned access to as well in here. Okay, so you can see all that inside in these, and you can see in my case, I have access to a lot of entities. Okay, if wanted to, I can log out. If I wanted to change, I can click on the actual name of the entity. See there? And then you could change to whatever entity when you want to change the reporting. Okay, so you're finished with Snap Investments. You now want to report for African Investments. Click here, and you can just swap the entity, and now you're going to be reporting for African Investments. Okay, so it's very easy move between entities inside the portal if necessary. The next thing is to create secondary users. To use a primary user, okay, now want to assign or delegate some of the work to some other users in the entity. So you want to assign a secondary user. So in the menu, I'm just going to pull this up out of the way there with me a little bit. So in the menu, if we go to administration, so in production, it's not as slow as this, by the way, just in case I think it is. So you can see here, you can create a new user in the system. So here on the right hand side, we click create new user. And now we can add the secondary user to the system. So now just to point out, because I know sometimes we're asked this question, can you have more than one primary user? Technically, yes, but you can't do it through the portal, okay? And ideally, there shouldn't be more than one primary user for any particular entity. You can have lots and lots of secondary users. Really, it should only just be one primary user. So here, and I'm just going to add in some details here. Now, depending on the reporting requirements, you select the relevant secondary user here, okay? Now, let's say I'm going to allow for both. If you click on the link, just to show this, you see the link here, that's the name of the role. It will show you what functionalities and what returns that secondary user has access to. So if you see here on mine, if I click on FATCA CRS, I can see that the secondary user, they can do FATCA manual XML, they can do CRS manual and XML, they can put in a change or reporting obligations, a filing summary, and a primary user change notice. There's not a huge difference between the functionality of a primary user and a secondary user, okay? One of the main ones would be change of reporting entity information, okay, and also in terms of reporting entity deactivation. All right, so there's only one or two filings that the primary user can do that a secondary user cannot, okay? The most important ones for the secondary user is to be able to create the relevant filings like CRS, XML, FATCA, and CBC. So you can see the functionality access. So you can see exactly what that user can actually do. They can create a filing, they can edit the names, and so on. So here, we're going to click create. And what this will do is that this will now send an email to Tricia to say you have now been assigned access to this particular entity. She will be given a link to the portal with a temporary password. She logs in, she changes the password, and now she's able to submit CRS, FATCA filings, and CBC as well. Okay. So if we go back, if we return to users, you see that link there. So if we return to users, so you can create as many secondary users as you want in the system. There isn't a limit, or we haven't seen a limit yet. Let's put it like that. So once you have a secondary user in the system, one thing to be aware of, because I've come across this with other jurisdictions, if the secondary user is, let's say, for example, located outside Bahamas, that's happened on a few occasions. If it looks like they have an issue, so let's say they try to log in and there's coming up saying your page cannot be displayed. Sometimes what happens is that email address needs to be whitelisted. So if the secondary user is located outside Bahamas and they're having issues, contact the competent authority. They will give us the email address and we can whitelist the email address so they know this user is based in the USA, that they can access the portal from there as well. It doesn't happen every time, but I have seen it happen. Okay, so just be aware of that, just in case any secondary users are outside the jurisdiction. One thing to be aware of with secondary users, so that let's say in this example, Tricia has left the entity, okay, and she's not going to be using it anymore. Do not delete the users out of the system, okay? What you do is you make them inactive. So, and that's because it has to be that audit trail there, okay? So if you see here on mine, okay, I'm the primary user, Tricia has left. If I click on view and edit out here on the right hand side, and it brings up the details of that specific secondary user. So you can see here, the activation status is set to active. So what we want to do is we want to change that to inactive. So when we click edit at the bottom of the screen there, And notice there's an option here to click inactive. So we select inactive, we click save, and now notice here, see it says inactive under status. So what that means is that if Tricia tries to log in, the system will stop her, okay, from logging in. And that's really important to remember. So there's no point contacting the competent authority saying we want to delete someone from the system. You just make them inactive. So that audit trail is there the whole time. So that's how you can actually create a secondary user and also how to make them inactive inside the system. So we're now going to move on to actually creating a CRS filing in the system. Okay, so we're going to do a number of these. So we're going to do one as a manual filing. We're going to do another one as an XML filing. Okay, and later on, we're going to show how you can amend those filings. So if you needed to make a correction, how you do that as well. Okay, so what we do is in the portal, go to filings in the menu at the top. And from there, we should see an option to create a filing. So we will click create filing. And I'll show what this screen does in a minute now. I'll just create the filing first. Okay. Now, when you're creating a CRS filing, there's no specific naming convention. Okay, so the OECD have an outline that has to be written in this order. It's totally up to the FI. Okay, our recommendation is that you make the name somewhere relevant to what the filing is about. So here, let's say I'm just going to put in CRS. I'm going to use manual just so for my own purpose here, and we just say France, and I'm just going to say 2021. I'm just using that as an example. Now here are the list of different types of filings. So if it's a manual CRS, you must select manual entry here, okay? If it's XML, you must select the XML filing. We'll see that now in a minute as well. Here, for the period end date, we will put in 31st of the 12th, 2021. Now, you'll notice that all these are mandatory. So they have to be completed before you can create the filing. So here, if we click create filing, and this creates the filing inside the system. So I'm actually going to create a second one as well, actually, just so to have it there. So yeah, so there's two options here. If you're ready to actually complete the filing straight away, you can click on this link, and we'll see this in a minute. If you go back to return to manage filings, just want to check that everybody's okay in the chat. Actually, so just bear with me a second. Okay, so it's fine. Okay, hang on. Okay, just for the people online, can you see this just one screen? I see there's comments there about seeing two screens, but should only see one screen. If someone wants to put into the chat there. Or did you? Oh, okay, great. Still see two? Yes, one screen. See two screens. I'm not quite sure how that's happening, actually. One screen. Okay. It's a little strange. Okay. Press on it. Some people are seeing two. I'm not quite sure why that's happening. So if you remember from earlier, if you see the screen there, so this was blank. So every time you have a filing sitting in the system, you'll see a list of all the filings in here. Okay, so if they're incompleted, okay, so you've created the filing or haven't completed it, you're going to see a list of all those filings inside this particular screen. Okay, so if we've created a filing, now we want to complete it. So here we can click on the filing name, and then we actually start complete the filing then. So if we see here, and I know I haven't put it into slideshow mode, but you can see the screen. So this is what you're going to see. So you're going to see different sort of folders that need to be completed in the file. Okay, so you're going to see one called general information, you're going to have reporting FI information, and then you're going to have the account information as well. So these all need to be completed in the CRS. Okay. The other thing to remember with CRS is that when you're submitting your filings, they're country specific, right? So if I have accounts for France, then only accounts for France can go in this, okay? And that is the same for XML, okay? So one thing that people ask is, I have an XML file with accounts for France, Germany, and so on. They cannot all be in one filing. You'll see that with the XML, okay? So there'd have to be a separate filing for France, a separate one for the UK, and so on, okay? So inside here, you see the general information. So if I click edit and click on general information, that's fine as well. Okay. So here, we're going to choose the receiving country. Now I might just zoom in actually a little bit there. Okay, so the receiving country, I'm going to use France. Okay, now we have this option here, the message type. Okay, so the message contains new information, whether it contains corrections for previously sent information, there's no data to report. Now I'm just going to focus on new information in this example. So in here, I'm going to select that. You see this message ref, that is generated automatically. So you don't have to do that, okay? Don't adjust it, okay? Just leave the system, generate the references automatically. And you'll see there's other examples in the accounts and in the reporting FI information as well. Once that is in, click validate and save. And once you validate and save, yeah, if you notice, you get the green tick here. So that's telling me that this form is validated. So you can see there, I'm just scrolling across. That's only because of the zoom. Now, we now want to add in the rest of the information. So if I go CRS report, I click add section. And notice now you get this plus beside the folder. We expanded, and now we have the reporting FI information. So if we click edit, so this should pull in the information that was originally submitted on the enrollment form. Okay, so you can see it tells me I don't need to change anything here. It tells me it's new data. This docref ID, don't edit that. That's fine. The system has generated it. You see the reporting FI name, the ID number. See it has the details here. We can click validate and save on that. But once we validate and save, it comes back to the main form. And you see the way, now look here, you see the way that's all validated. Now we want to add the account information. So we click on the green plus on the right-hand side. Okay. Again, the system will generate the docref IDs. You don't need to do anything with that there. Okay. So we have an account holder type here. See if it's CRS reportable person. Okay. Passive non-financial entity. Okay. The undocumented accounts, we will come back to that later. So if it's an individual or foreign entity, if you see here, so I just put in details here for an individual account. So let's put in here. going to complete these details here. Now we can scroll it down. We're just going to make up some figures here. It doesn't make a difference what we're doing here. So we're just going to choose dollar here to move that slightly, causing a problem. Okay. Now we can have the option to say whether the account is closed, okay, or whether the account is dormant. If there's a payment record, you can click on Add Payment Record. You can choose the payment type, you can choose the currency, and we can choose the amount. If you wanted to add another payment record, again, you can go Add Payment Record, and you can see you can add the second payment type, and you have the currencies and so on again. If you want to delete, you can click Delete here like that in the system. Okay. Now, if I click on Validate and Save, so all the rules that the OECD outlined for CRS reporting, the system hasn't built in. So if there's any issues, and I'm going to show some features where we get errors deliberately, the system will actually come back and tell you what the error is, okay, and then you need to go and just obviously fix the error, okay. So I'll show that with an XML file. It's easier to show it with something like that. So if you see here, okay, you can see here now account information for David Jones. All these fields are validated. Let's say I had another account, okay, for Francia. If that is the case, you would click the plus here, and then you would add the account again, okay? So when you're doing it manually, you just keep clicking the plus here. There is a limit on that though, okay? So the limit is 50, okay? So if you're doing it manually, number of these you can add as a manual is 50 accounts manually. After that, it has to be an XML file, okay? So once that is all in, okay, you click Validate and Save up here. So we'll just validate and save there on that. So what the system is doing, yeah, you can see here, okay. So this is one of the things, Andrew, I think you wanted to find out, isn't it, with the tin and the date of birth, yeah. So in here, if you notice, it's come back with errors, all right. So you see there it's telling me an individual tin is missing, okay, and it's also telling me that the date of birth is missing, okay. So it's stopping the filing from actually being submitted to the competent authority. So what I'm going to do is, or actually I'll show this here, I think, yeah. So you'll notice you have an option to export out all the errors. So you can click Export, and that will export it out to Microsoft Excel file. Okay. Now, if it's only 2, that's fine. Okay, you can fix it there. But sometimes, particularly if you're dealing with XMLs and you have hundreds of thousands of accounts, you might have a lot of errors. It's easier to export and just have that as a separate file to work with. So in here, actually, another thing I want to show just before we go and fix this, if we click back the bottom here, yeah. So if you notice here that, see, it's actually come up with this errors and warnings. So if I click on that, that will actually bring me back into that page where I can see the errors and warnings for that particular file. If I go back again, where I see the list of filings I have in the portal, notice there's an exclamation mark. So if you see that, that is telling you that there's an error or warning with that specific filing, okay? So if I click on it, it'll bring me back in, okay? Should be able to go and fix this now. So yeah, so it shows me the issues and I can click back then. So now I'm going to go and try and fix this. So click on the filing name. Okay, so I'm going to expand my folders here down to my account information. I'm going to click Edit over here on the right. Then hopefully we can fix up these errors and revalidate and submit them. Okay, so you see here, date of birth. So we just needed to put in a date of birth there, and we also needed to put in a TIN as well, actually. So okay, let's just validate and save. So once you go in and you make the correction, we validate and save, and then we just go and we try and submit the filing again. Okay, so very easy to go in and fix it like that, particularly if it's a manual file. Obviously, if it's XML, it can be a little bit more work. So if I go validate and submit this time, okay, yeah, okay. So I'm just going to click submit there. So now it's told me that the filing has been validated, it's now been submitted, and it's now ready to be transmitted to the CTS and sent on to the relevant jurisdiction from there. So a couple of things just to be aware of. I'm going to go and create another filing because I don't want to point this out because this is something that is specific to the Bahamas implementation. All right, because you might have noticed it on the form, it wasn't set as a mandatory field for date of birth or for TIN, okay, on the form, but there's a very good reason for that. So I'm actually going to create another filing just to show this. So how you create any filing in the system is pretty similar. Now, I will show how you can access your previous filings as well. So I'm going to create another one here. So let's just go CRS Germany, say 23. Oh, just going to go manual entry and very quickly just put in my period end date there. So I just want to go and get into the account so I can pull up these 2 points about the TIN and the date of birth. So if you remember I was saying earlier, actually, you can see here, if I wanted to go and access the filing straight away, I don't have to go back to manage filings. I can click on, just go CRS Germany 23, and it brings me straight into the filing from here. So from here, I'm going to go and complete the form. So in my general information, and you can see again, the system generates the message RFIDs and all that. So you don't have to edit there. The only thing I'm really doing here is just selecting the countries. I'm just going to select Germany, validate and save. I'm just going to validate and save the reporting FI information. So here we click add section, expand. Then for the reporting FI, just going to validate and save here. Again, it's just taking a little bit of time. Just be patient, everybody. Save for those online. Now add the account information. Click add. Okay, so if you notice here, so I'm just going to add in some details here. Notice, see the date of birth and the TIN, they're not set as mandatory, okay? So what happens for the FI user here, okay, it's set as a rule just for Bahamas. The OECD have not outlined these to be mandatory fields. So that's why on the form, they're not set as mandatory, okay? However, the system is set up so that if the entities, or if, when you're completing it and you submit it, if you don't enter them in, you get the error that I just had there. Okay, so that's why they're not listed as mandatory. It's because it's not set as an OECD regulation, competent authority stipulation. All right, so that's just to emphasize that particular point. That's why it's appearing like that in the form. Okay, so put in some random details here again. And let me just very quickly put in, fill this out. Okay. So just going to add in, and just validate and save. Now, if you remember earlier when I was saying, so let's say I had more than one account for Germany. Okay, what happens is that I don't need to go and create another filing. Okay, is that inside in this filing, I scroll it down. If I want to add another account, I click the plus here. Okay? So I can click the plus. Okay, and then I can go and I can add all the details again in there. Okay, so let's say I just save as draft on that there. So save as draft, that will just save all the information you've set up. You can see here, if you look now, see the way here, so I can see Lucy Evans, that's validated, but I can see I have another one here that's in draft. Okay, so it's telling me as a user that I need to go and complete this particular form. So if I want to delete it, I can click delete here. So if I click delete, it says delete the reportable folder instance, removes all the forms in relation to that account. Click OK. And now look at the form. So you see the way it's all validated now. I'm just going to leave that in the actual system for the time being. I'll check if there's any comments about. Okay, zoom the presentation screen. Okay. Okay, thanks for the comments that have come in there, just in terms of fixing the issue with two screens. Okay. Now, this time, we want to create a CRS XML file. All right. So this one is a little bit different. All right. So how you create the filing itself is actually straightforward, but there's a couple of subtle differences after that. So we're going to click create filing there. Again, we have to put in our name. Okay. So as I was saying earlier, there's no naming conventions, but probably good practice if you want to use maybe something for your own. Let's put in 24. Now here, you must select the XML upload. Okay, so when you're using an XML filing, you must select that XML upload filing. We will put in our year, period and date. We're going to click create. So again, that will create the filing in the system, and then we will log in into the filing, and then we will complete it. So the differences with XML and with a manual are like this, so that with the manual, you actually went into each relevant section, like general information, FI information, account holders, and all that. You don't do any of that with an XML. So you'll see now, once the page just loads here, is that you only, even though you can see general information, notice you don't get an option to edit. So the only thing you can do is to upload the XML file directly. So click on upload data, load a file. So we'll choose file. This one is. So what happens with an XML upload is this. As soon as you upload the file, all the rules that the OECD have outlined, it starts processing. So it goes through the XML, it does a check to see is it passing all the rules, okay? If it doesn't pass all the rules, it will stop the filing from actually being submitted, okay? So if you see here, okay, we're now going to click done. And this will just refresh. Shouldn't take too long, to be honest. For a small XML filing, should process it pretty quickly. So the user, we get an email, okay? So I can see there's errors and warnings. That's fine, okay? So if you see here, so the user will get an email saying that the file has been unsuccessfully submitted, all right? Again, we can see the errors and warnings. Okay, so please note, so individual account TIN is missing, okay, controlling person TIN is missing, and so on. So I can see what all the errors are with that particular file. So then what you need to do is to go in, I'm not going to go and start editing XML files, okay, but just to pull the one up on the screen, okay, you need to come in and then you just need to edit the XML file. Okay, don't worry about that, okay? But so I only just put it up on the screen. I'm not going to do anything with it. So that needs to be adjusted, and then you actually upload again. All right. So what we'll do is I'm just going to close that. Okay. Back into my portal. Click back. Okay. And what I would do is I would upload the clean file. All right. And I'm going to set up another filing now. I think I have a clean one there to demonstrate. At least I hope I have. But when you want to override it, as soon as you click upload, you get the option to clear, right? And then you can upload the new file and it starts processing and submits the file with that, okay? So you know the way with the manual filing. When you actually created the manual filing, you had to physically click on validate and submit, okay? You don't with an XML. I know you can see the button there on the screen, but once it passes all the rules, it's submitted automatically to the competent authority, okay? So you don't have to manually go and validate and submit. It passes all the rules and it's submitted automatically into the competent authority then. Sorry? This one, yeah. 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 No, you can see all the accounts. Yeah, you can see them there. However, you can't go and edit them manually. Do you know what I'm saying? Like so, but you can see all the accounts listed here as well. Yeah, good point though. Okay, so just for those online, okay, if you've uploaded an XML file and you expand out the CRS report, okay, you can see what accounts have actually been added into that particular XML file there. Now, as well as that, actually, just to point this out, you will see there's a button that has view upload history. I'm going to click on that, and it's just to show it. It's not that really do a huge amount with it, maybe, but just hopefully it'll load quickly here. Yeah, it actually tells you the name of the XML file, when it was uploaded, the time, who uploaded it, okay, and it was uploaded to this particular filing, and it just says it's processed. Now, it's processed and that it hasn't passed all the checks, but that option there will allow you to actually look at what file was uploaded, okay, and if you click on it, okay, you can actually download the XML file. So maybe hypothetically, okay, a secondary user has come in, they've uploaded an XML file, it's failed, okay? The primary user can log in and then they can go into view upload history and they can actually download the XML file that the secondary user has actually uploaded. So you could use, that's one of the reasons behind it. If you have multiple users in the system, other users can see what files were uploaded, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to create another XML filing here. Just go back. Okay, and again, you can see the more filings you have in the system, you can see them all here. So I'm just going to create another one now. Just see. Okay, so let me just create XMLs. 3. Okay, so again, we're just going to go straight into the filing and we'll just upload our XML file here. So okay, so click upload data. Yes, yeah, choose file, select this one. Still could get warnings with this. That's okay. Done, and it processes now. Just to show, yeah, okay, so that's unsuccessful. So you can see as well, this is what the user gets, okay? So it tells you that the email has been successful, tells you to go into the system, review the filing, review the errors, fix it, and resubmit again. That's essentially what the email. So there's constant communication from the system. If it isn't work, if something is not right, then you can go and fix it up then. So I can see here, probably have the same errors and warnings. So if I go here, oh, I suspect it is. Yeah, same Docker FID. That's fine. So we click back on that. Okay. Now, let's say you want to take a look at what your submitted filings are. Okay, so let's say you've made multiple submissions and you want to look at what files have been actually submitted into the system. So here in the filings, there's an option to view submissions. So I'll just let this load. It's not fully loaded right there. Yeah. Okay, so you see here, view submissions. And this will show me all the filings that have actually been submitted. So, and you can filter then by the year. So you can see 2025, if I select 2024, and so on, it'll show me the filings for each respective year then in the actual system. So I know there's been some questions coming into the competent authorities. So let's say there's one primary user for 10 different entities, okay? There isn't a quick way to see all the submissions for all 10. I see the smiles around the room. I suspect the questions are from there. Okay, so there isn't a quick way to actually see, oh, I can run to see everything I've submitted for, let's say, blue investments, green investments, red investments, and so on. The only way you can do that is actually to change the entity up at the top, and then you can see the submissions for each entity. So we've taken that on board, have gone back to product. We'll see if they come up with a solution maybe to that. But unfortunately, at the moment, there isn't a quick solution. So if there's anyone here who is reporting for multiple entities, you have to change the entity to see all the different submissions for that respective entity. Okay. So let me go back to 2021. I think that one was visible. Yeah. So you can see there's one that's actually submitted there. Okay, so I'm actually just going to go back here to the main filings. We're going to take a look at some of the other filings that are inside in the system. So again, we're going to create a new filing. So you can see there's options here like change the reporting entity information, change the reporting obligations, CRS filing summary. Okay, we're going to take a look at some of these. Okay, so let's say we take a look at this one, change the reporting information. So just say reporting information. Okay. Just put in today or yesterday's date there. So click create. We'll just see what this one actually does. So again, it creates the filing in the actual system, and then we go straight into the filing there. So reporting info change. And we'll just click edit on that then. Okay. So what it allows you to change is essentially things like your address. That's really what you're changing here. Okay. So you can change things like your postcode, your address. Okay. If you wanted to, you can change the entity type in here or the GIN. Okay. So let's put in, spell it correctly. Then one. Now, if I wanted to, I could add a file in here, okay, to kind of support the reason for the change. Okay. So once I've that in, I can click validate and save. Should be able to submit that. So these ones are pretty straightforward. Okay. So all you're doing here with a reporting entity or information change is really things like the address, maybe the entity type. Okay. And you can add some documentation in. So you can validate and submit. Okay. Click submit. That submits that filing to the competent authority. So let's wait for that page to load. So while I'm doing that, I just want to check any comments that have come in. Okay, that's all fine. It's good. Okay, so I think, Andrew, correct me if I'm wrong, this is one of the ones that needs to be approved by the competent authority, the reporting information change.
Only if it's a name.
Only if it's a name change. Okay, it's fine. It's just, yeah. Okay, so let me just go to the reporting entity management. So what should happen is that once it's submitted and accepted, it should update the profile straight away. Now, there might be a very slight time delay here. If I go to my reporting entity profile, and if it doesn't update straight away, that's okay. We can fix that up later. Yeah, it hasn't updated instantly, but that's okay. Okay, that's okay. Okay, so that's one filing. Okay, so that's a quite short one. It's just in terms of the address and things like that that you're changing there. Let's say, hypothetically, you actually wanted to change the primary user. So let's say the primary user has left the entity, gone to a different position. Okay, how do we go about changing that? The first thing to remember, let's say the primary user has left. Okay, and you still have secondary users. The secondary user should still be able to submit a change of primary user. Okay, so if you see here in filings, and I'm going to show this now here on mine. Now I won't go through the full steps because I'll only change myself from being the primary user. So if we click create, take a break in about 5 minutes or so. So okay, so if you see here, primary user change, I'm just going to show this one. So let's say I just go primary user change. Just put in yesterday's date there, and we click create. Again, that creates the filing in the system. But now I'm going to put this change in. So So you have to enter the original primary user's details, and then you also have to enter the new primary user details. So just go to that form. Okay, so you see here, now we have to enter the existing one. So just put in my details here. I'm actually going to put in a deliberate mistake in here for just demonstration purposes. And I'm now going to enter in the new primary user. Okay, so just bear with me while I complete this. So I'll use Trisha's email address again. Now, again, even though if you remember back on the enrollment form, you had to actually submit like a supporting documentation. You still have to do that if there's a primary user change as well. Okay, so even though it's not the initial enrollment, I'm just going to move that out of the way, you still need to add the supporting documentation. Now, I've made a deliberate mistake in my email address, so I want to illustrate this. So if I validate and save, okay, I'm going to validate and submit. So all going well, this error will be up on. Yeah. So if you see here, it's actually telling me that the existing primary user information email doesn't match what's in the database. Okay. So if someone does put in wrong information there, okay, the system won't allow that change to go through. Okay. So here, I'm just going to go back and fix this up. Okay. And we'll resubmit it again. Okay. So I can see here, just click edit. And we'll take a break once this one is done then. Okay, I'm just going to fix up the email address. Validate and save, and then I'll resubmit it. Okay, taking a little bit longer. It should be fine. So what happens is that once this is actually submitted, it still tells me there's an error there, but that's from the previous submission. Submit. Should come back saying everything is okay. But this is one of the filings that's submitted. And correct me if I'm wrong what I'm going to say, but this has to be approved by the competent authority. So anytime you change a primary user, once it's submitted, it's not automatically approved. Someone from the competent authority has to go review that filing, okay? And once they make that change, okay, so if the competent authority are okay with what they see and they approve it, what happens is this, is that the new primary user will receive an email with a link to the portal and a temporary password, okay? And they should be able to access it then. The original primary user, soon as the new one has been accepted, they're actually deactivated in the system. Okay, so they will not be able to activate the system anymore. So that's what happens with a primary user change. Okay, I'll tell you what we do. We'll actually take a break now. So for those online, we'll take a break for 15 minutes. So, okay, so if everybody's good to go for 11:35, okay, finish off. So we still have factor filings and CBC. They're the main things that we have to cover. Okay. Some water. Okay, everybody, we will start back. So just bear with me. Double check everything is okay online. Yeah, just for the people online, if you just want to give a thumbs up, just to make sure you can hear me. Someone put that through. Yeah, hands up. That's great. Okay, thanks for that, folks. Great. Okay, so we're going to continue working within the portal. We are going to create, this time, a FATCA filing, okay, in the system. So here, just minimize that. We will click Create Filing. Again, we create the filing the exact same way as we've created any of the filings in the system. So we give it a name, we choose the filing type, and we set the period end date as well. So say FATCA, we'll just put in manual there. So we look down through the list, we choose our FATCA filing, okay, and we put in 2022. Click Create. Now, again, that creates the filing inside the system. So, and what we're going to do is we're then going to go in and we'll actually complete that file. So, taking a little bit of time, but should be fine. Just want to double check. Okay. All right, great. Okay, so back in manual. So we're going to see the structure of the form inside in the portal. So I have a screenshot of it here, actually, while we're waiting. Yeah, so very similar. We have our general information, we have our reporting FI, and then we have our account information as well. So in here, we go to our general information. Just run a little bit slower than was at the start. So just be patient, everybody. Again, just to emphasize, it's not like this in production. So we're going to say it's new data. Again, the message ref is already in there. You don't have to edit or change anything in relation to that. We click validate and save. And like what we saw with CRS, okay, you'll see the form is validated now with the green tick down the left-hand side. So, and again, we move through the form just very similar to what we did with CRS. So in here, we add our section on the right-hand side. You can see now we have our US FATCA filing, expand the relevant folder, click reporting FI information. Again, it should pull in all those details that would have been on the initial enrollment. Anyway, it should not have to kind of complete this form again, let's say. So, yeah, so you can see document type, the docref ID is generated. We have the filer category. So in here, I'm just going to pick any one of them. So we can see here, actually, Andrew, you were saying, is it with the address for both CRS and FATCA, is it? So yeah, just be as detailed as possible with the address. So if there's a PO box, or if the street is just West Street, don't just put in the street name, put in 22 West Street, whatever the case may be. Please give as much detailed information as possible there. Now, does this return represent a nil report? We will take a look at that, but for this example, we're just going to say no. We'll validate and save. And then we should be able to add the account information then as well. So games. I think with the time differences, they're finishing up soon in Ireland. I think maybe it's got a bit slower than it was this morning, but yeah, here we go. So here we can add the account information. So we click the plus, and we start adding the account information. Like with the CRS, if you remember I was saying with manual entry for CRS, you can have 50 accounts as manual entry. It's the same for FATCA, okay? Anything more than that, then you should be looking at using an XML file, okay? So here, I'm gonna put in our numbers. Put in date of birth, okay? There's a hand up there. I just want to check everything's okay. If it's a question, it can wait. So whoever's the hand up, if it's a question, just in case you weren't there at the start, we're going to deal with all questions at the end. You can put a question into the chat and we'll look at that at the end there as well. If it's an issue in terms of seeing the screen or something like that, maybe just type that into the chat as well. Okay. Excellent as well. Okay, so in here we have our details. So we've just put in details here. I can't even spell West. Then just add some details in here as well. So click validate and save. And again, like with the CRS, if there's any validation issues, anything like that has been specified by the IRS, they're all built into the system. So if it doesn't meet those checks, okay, it will come back with an error. So you can see once the form is validated, you should be able to validate and submit. Again, yeah, it's been validated, and we should be able to submit now. And that filing is then being submitted to the competent authority. So that's how you can do a manual one. I know it's very basic. I mean, I'm not the tax expert, so you know more about that side of it than me. But in terms of creating the file and completing it, there are the steps that you need to take. If there's any rules that haven't been, when you're completing it, if it doesn't meet any of the requirements that have been specified, the system will kick back errors the exact same way as what we saw with CRS. Okay, remember, it's got the list of errors. You go fix those errors, and then you can resubmit the form again. Okay? Very similar, okay, with a FATCA XML. Okay, so if we see here, just create another filing there. But this time we'll just use FATCA XML. So we're going to type in FATCA XML and put in, just let me check, say 23. So 23, click create. Again, it generates the filing in the system. So click FATCA XML. Now, like with the last one with CRS, you don't go and you edit general information. Everything is inside the XML file. So click upload data. You go choose the file, and then you select the relevant file then. So I'm going to use this one here. So again, once you upload an XML file, it begins that processing. So any rules or regulations, if it doesn't meet any of them, the filing will not be submitted. Okay, you will get a notification. You will see if there's errors in the system, okay, and then you can fix that then. So let me just bring up the email. Okay, and this one you can see has been successfully submitted. So every time you submit a filing, there is an email notification sent out to the user letting them know, okay, that that filing has been successful or unsuccessful. So if I expand, okay, you can see there account information. Okay. Yeah. Now, I'm just going to go back here for a second just to show, because I know by the email that this has been successfully submitted. So when the filing has been successfully submitted, and we should be able to see this now, yeah, is in the draft filings. You see any filings that haven't been submitted or there have been issues are sitting here, okay? If it's been successfully submitted, you will not see it in draft filings anymore. It's now gone. It's been submitted to the competent authority. If you wanted to look at that filing that was submitted, if you remember from earlier, if we go to view submissions, and then you can filter for the year. So in here, I think I set this one for 23, remember correctly. So let me just set 2023 there. And it should show me the filing that was actually submitted. So it's easy, go check any of these inside in the actual portal. I'm actually going to try another XML filing, and I'm actually going to submit the same XML file, all right, just to see what errors we might get with that. Okay, so you can see here, I'll just go back, and I'm going to create another filing. So, okay. So we'll just create another filing here. I'm going to actually create the exact same FATCA filing. I'm going to use the exact same XML file, but I just want to show you what the system does, okay, if that's the case, right? So just get another one. I just call it FATCA 2. Say errors. It should have errors. So click create. And again, we'll just upload an XML file. So let's go into the filing. XML file then. So inside here, it's the exact same XML file. Again, we click done, okay, and it starts processing that file then. So see here, yeah, okay. Notice straight away, okay, that I've had 5 errors and warnings. So I just wanted to show what the system does. So you can see the way here should come back with probably saying Docker FID was already found, okay, and see message reference is not unique, okay, because I already submitted that XML file. It's the exact same file that I submitted twice, so it's not allowing an entity to submit the same XML file, okay, so it's coming back with the errors, okay. In this case, what I could do is in the draft filings, just go back one more. Actually delete it out of the portal. So if you see here, once this loads, okay, you see this option here out on the right hand side. I can delete. I should be able to delete that filing out of the portal then. So click confirm. Back to manage filings or the draft filings, and that filing is going to out of the system. So it is possible to delete filings. If something like that happened, sometimes you can just delete it. If you wanted that, just restart again if necessary. Okay. Okay. So what we now want to do is, so we've done the 2 FATCA filings, whether it's manual and XML. I know we still have to do the nil filing. We will come to that. The next thing I want to show is in relation to CBC. And I know not everybody might be reporting on CBC. So in here, if we create a filing, so if you're reporting for CBC, the very first thing you have to do is to actually submit an Article 3 notification, okay? So when you're initially enrolled into the system and you've put CRS as your reporting obligations, in here, you need to put in your Article 3 filing first. So we'll just say snap there. So inside here, okay, this back a bit. So just go. So again, it just generates the return in the system, and then we complete this specific return here. So now the thing is, if you are reporting CBC, okay, if you do not complete the Article 3, the system will actually stop you from submitting a CBC filing, okay? So that's really important to remember, okay? You must actually complete this Article 3. Okay, so the form itself is actually quite straightforward. So you put in the activity of the notifying entity, okay? Commercial registration number, I'll just put in something there. Now, this option here has implications further down in the form. If you look at constituent entity information, we can see that this is grayed out, okay? But if I choose, let's say one of these, local filing, okay, now look, it becomes active. So depending on what is actually selected up here, okay, if I click ultimate parent entity, you see the way this is grayed out, okay? So depending on what you choose in that drop-down menu, will activate this part of the form. Now, just for the purpose of the demo, okay, I'm actually going to put in this ultimate parent entity there. So just pick up a name, okay, we tick this box, and then we validate and save then. And once we validate and save, now we can actually go and submit this to the competent authority. So validate and submit. And once that's submitted, okay, we now are in a position to actually submit a CBC filing. So click submit, okay, and we can go back to manage filing. So that's the first thing with the Article 3. You have to complete that before you can actually go and submit a CBC. Now, when you're when you're submitting a CBC filing, there is one very distinct difference from the CBC filing to FATCA and CRS. So if you notice, when you were given the option, okay, to create a CRS and FATCA filing, you had the manual option. So you had manual or XML. For CBC, you only have XML. There's no manual option available for CBC. So it has to be an XML file. So you can see here, CBC XML upload entry or upload filing, click create. So go into the filing, and then we can upload our XML file. So it's very important, that distinction with CBC and the other two options. The other two, as I said, they have manual entry, okay? CBC does not. It's only XML is allowed here. So I choose my file, select my CBC, click done on that. And again, like any of the XML filings, starts the process straight away, checks any of the OECD rules. A lot of errors there, have I? Yeah, I have 200. Okay, but that's fine. And what you'll find is that it Lost my train of thought now. I've seen the 200 errors. Okay, I wasn't expecting that. Okay, so with the CBC, as I said, it's only XML. Okay, and then it starts the processing. If it fails any of the checks, as mine clearly has, you get a list of all the errors and warnings here, of which we can export out. See here, it might be because it's already been submitted actually. Yeah, so you can see here, it comes back with all the relevant information, okay, for each one of those errors. Again, you could export out the errors. You probably can't see it now because I have it zoomed in too far. So let's go back. Okay, and we go back again. So that's the thing with the CBC, all right? You have to complete the Article 3, and it's only allowing XML file and upload. That's it. Now, if you remember from the very beginning, I said about the enrollment, okay? So remember I was saying, if you were already registered in the system for CRS, and you now need to report for CBC, you do not do another enrollment, okay? What you use is a change of reporting obligations. So what I'm actually going to do here is I'm going to change the entity, okay, to a different one. So I have banking, okay, just bear with, yeah, okay. So I just want to check that this is only set for CRS before I go any further with this. So once this page finally loads, and it has, let me just open up tab on that one. Create a filing in this one here. So as I was saying, if you're already inside the system, you do not do another enrollment off that public enrollment page. But what you do is you actually log into the portal and you create a filing. Okay, so I'm going to click create filing here. Just want to, while that's creating, I just want to run this as a check. So it should only be for CRS at the moment. So okay. Now, if you see this option here, change the reporting obligations. So I'm going to put in reporting obligation change. Okay, and I put this in, set it for the 1st of July here. So let me just check. Yeah, so it's only a CRS. That's perfect. So I click create. Again, all of this is the same as what we've seen in all the other filings so far. But once this one loads and we go into that particular filing, okay, and we go into the form. So there's only one form in here, but should be quite straightforward. So okay. So if you see here at the moment, it's pulled in some of that information that we had on the initial enrollment, and we can see the reporting type is just CRS. But I want to change that. So here I click add, okay, and let's say I put in CBC, I click add, let's say I put in FATCA in there as well. If I wanted to have some supporting documentation, click choose file, then I'm going to select the file here as well. So when all of that is uploaded, what I'm going to do is validate and save. I should be able to just validate and submit. So what happens is that when you submit that filing, that change should be accepted and processed automatically in the system, okay? So what should happen is that the next time you log in, okay, you should now have access to create an Article 3, CBC filing, and a FACTA filing, okay? So this is why we're saying, if you're already in the system, do not use that public enrollment, but use this reporting obligation change, okay? So if I just log out now, hopefully, let's log out. Hopefully it will update really quickly. Should be fairly instant once it's submitted. Just let me log back in. I just need to select the entity here. So I'm going to use the River Banking, click log in. If it's not there straight away, it could just be a timing issue, this particular virtual machine. But if I go to filings, saying it's successfully submitted, I go create filing. Yeah, it hasn't come through wide yet. Yeah, I can see FATCA, but that's okay. Yeah, I'll just give that a couple of minutes. I'd say it's probably just a timing thing. So that then would allow you, it's told me that it's been successfully processed or submitted. So probably within a couple of minutes, you could log in and you can submit your Article 3 and you can do your CBC filing as well. So that's the whole reporting obligation change filing. So what we want to take a look at next is, let's say you submitted a CRS filing, okay? But you now need to make a correction to that, okay? How do we fix that? So that's what we're going to take a look at now. So I'm going to log back, sorry, yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. Okay, I'll do that as part of it. No, I had that down in the list anyway. So yeah, that's okay. I had forgotten, Andrew. I didn't realize actually. I thought you had that actually. No, okay. Okay, just let me switch entities here. Okay. Now, one thing I would always say, particularly if you're dealing with a manual entry, so let's say you originally submitted CRS manual filing, okay, and you now need to make a change to that filing or there's a correction. It's genuinely better if you have two tabs open at the same time, okay? So I'm going to open up, see filings, so I have two portal tabs open at the same time. You'll see why in a second, okay? So the first thing is, we want to go to the filing that was originally submitted, okay? The one that you want to correct, okay? So remember, go to View Submissions. I'm going to go to the submission that we did at the very beginning, okay? So I think it was 2021. Yeah. So what we would do here is we would actually go into that particular filing. See there like that. So go to View Submissions, go to the filing that you want to correct. And I'm just going to expand the relevant information there. So in the other tab, I'm going to put Create a File. So this is the one that's going to be the correction. Okay. So, and you see the benefit of having two tabs open at the same time in a minute. So here, wait for that. Okay. So let me go CRS manual entry. So let's say CRS, say manual, say France correction 21. Change my period and date, and I click create. So we'll just go straight into the filing this time. So this is the one that we're going to make the correction in. Okay, so just waiting. This is the original filing here. So, okay. Now, there is a change in the general information. Okay, so, in here, remember at the very start, there's an option for the message type. Okay. So, here we have to put in the message contains corrections. Okay. So, you see here, we select corrections. We'll put in France again. Okay, and we can click validate and save there. So it's really important to change that message type at the start. Okay. Once we change that, okay, we'll just stay in this filing here. Okay. So I'm going to add my CRS report and just expand. Now, if I go into the reporting FI information form, let me just go into that. You should notice small changes. Okay. See here, look at the document type. All right. Remember on the original ones, they were saying new data. All right. But this one is now saying it's corrected data. Okay. So you see there's a docref ID as well. Okay. So that's the docref ID of this corrected file. Okay. You don't change that. But notice on the right hand side, there's now a field that's become active. Okay. So it actually tells us if this is it represents a change to previously submitted data. Right. It now tells us to put in the corresponding docref ID. So what this means is this, and this is why it's really good to have the two tabs. If you go back to the original filing in the other tab, go into the reporting FI information, and we should be able to copy the docref ID of the original filing into for the corrected filing. Okay. So if you see here, yeah, so you see this docref ID here. See that? Just highlight that, copy it, go back to the other tab. You see here, paste it in. Okay, so you're pasting in the docref ID of the original filing into the corrected filing here. One thing to watch out for, and it does depend sometimes on the browser and also how you highlight it, is that sometimes when you paste it in, you might see 3 or 4 spaces at the very end. Just make sure you backspace out. Now you can see on mine, the cursor is right there, the number, that should be fine. But if you see the cursor a little bit away, it's telling you it's included some spacing. Watch for that. Okay. So I'm going to just go validate and save on that one. So we're in the corrected filing here, just in case there's any confusion. So now let's go to our account information. So let's add the section again. And while we're doing that, in the original filing, I'm going to go back and I'm going to look at the account information in here as well. Okay, so here, yeah, fine. Okay, let me just expand here on that. I go into Jones. So notice here now, so this is on the corrected filing. See the document type? It's still telling me it's corrected data here, okay? Docref ID, that's fine. We don't change that. But again, look over here. So if this data represents a change to previously submitted data, okay, we need to pull in the docref ID on the original account that was submitted, copy it, and we paste it in. So I just okay. Now, kind of done this one deliberately. So notice the way this time on mine, look at the way the cursor is flashing at the end. So that's telling me there's spacing included. So that means I just want to go back. Okay, that spacing is removed. Okay, if I look at the form here, so I had David Jones. So it's in here. We'll put in some of these details. Yeah, I think we had date of birth, 80. What do I have there? Oh yeah, just Bahamas. Okay, that's fine. So let's put in Bahamas. I'll add in, let's say, a change here, Main Street. Okay, and let's say the amount was wrong. Okay, so we'll just put in dollar. Sure, did we have payments in? We did. Okay, so dividends of 1,000. So in here, payment record 1,000. We'll also add a second payment record. Just add interest. Say 8,000 there. So validate and save. Should allow me to submit this filing now. But the key thing is the DocRef ID. It's the DocRef ID of the FI information and the DocRef ID of the account. Okay, they're the two that you need. And that's why when you're actually making a corrected filing, technically you don't have to do this, but I would always recommend that you have 2 or 3 tabs open. So you're not having to kind of go back and forth. You can just switch from tab to tab. It makes way more sense to do something like that. Now, if you have them handy and you have them written down or somewhere else, that's fine. But when you're just using the system, okay, please don't. Forgot to make a change there, but that's okay. I'm not worried about that. So you can see there, that's what you have to do when you're actually making those account change correction. It is the DocRef IDs that you need to adjust. You also needed to adjust in the general information that it wasn't new data, that it was going to be corrected data. Okay, that's the one that you have to do. Okay, now I'm going to pull something up on the screen. Don't worry too much about the look of it. It's just one little aspect I want to point out. Okay, is see, can I find it myself in the middle of all these lines? Yeah, I do have it there. Or a specific field. Yeah, here it is. Okay, if it's an XML filing, okay, I'll highlight this so the people online can see it. So you see here, you have the DocRef ID, which is of the corrected file. Okay, but then you have a field called a core DocRef ID. Okay, so that's the DocRef ID I was copying from the original one and pasting it in. There's a specific extra field needed in an XML file. Okay, so just be aware of that. In the manual, you saw where you could put it, but in the XML, that has to be added into the actual XML file. Okay. So it's just something for anyone, any entities dealing with XMLs, that's something else you need to be aware of. Okay, so you want to ask me afterwards, no problem, or at the end of the session, that's fine. Okay, so. Okay, so that's dealing with the amending the data, okay, in a CRS filing. Okay, I'm just going to go back here. Actually, go back on this one as well. Okay, so a couple of more things we're going to do, and we're nearly done in terms of the demo, and then we'll open the floor, open to questions, and also for any questions that were online as well. So let me just see what have we got here. Okay, so just create a filing here. Okay, so there's another filing I want to show. It's a CRS filing summary. Okay, so let's say you've submitted all your all your CRS findings, okay? And you want to get a summary of everything, okay? So if you see here, I'm just going to put in CRS filing summary, okay? And we'll just say 21. So I know there's one for that. So we click create. We selected the type of CRS filing summary. Now this one is a little bit different because in every other filing that we have in the system, you manually do something in that file, okay? The summary is a bit different. And you see what I mean? When I click on the filing name here, okay, and we'll just click edit on that there. So when you click edit on a CRS filing summary, what it does, it shows you all the reportable jurisdictions and it shows you all the reportable accounts for each individual jurisdiction, okay? So you can see there, I just have one for France, okay? But you click validate and save, and then I can submit. So that's what the CRS filing summary is, okay? It just shows you all the reportable jurisdictions and it shows you all the reportable accounts. You don't go in and edit anything, okay? And you only do it after you've submitted all your filings, okay? Now, let's say you submitted your filings and you've done your CRS filing summary, okay? Let's say 2 days later, I forgot I meant to put in another account here, okay? You submit the new CRS filing, but you need to update the filing summary. So you actually need to go and recreate the filing summary again because it won't have updated from the one from 2 days earlier, okay? So you just be aware of that with filing summaries. Once you do them, if you do any other changes after that, you will need to redo the filing summary again. So here we can go validate and submit. Okay, so there's only a couple of more filings that we have to take a look at, and then there's another feature I want to show. Okay. Oh yeah, that's fine. Oh yeah, actually, that's no harm actually to see that. Okay, if you see there, actually, if you do a filing summary and you still have filings in draft in the system, it won't submit it because it's basically telling you that you haven't actually submitted all your filings, okay? So the system is coming back saying exactly what the error there, saying the declaration should only be created after all the CRS filings. So there's kind of safety measures within the system that if you have anything still in draft, you can't actually submit a CRS filing summary for that particular period. Mm-hmm. Actually, even though I hadn't that planned, it's actually a very good point that happened there. Okay, so I want to show as well the reporting entity deactivation form. And I also want to show just the FATCA nil filing. And then there's just one other feature after that. And then we're down to just the Q&A then after that. So let me just go to filings here. Okay, so we're just going to create a filing. So let's say in this example, we want to deactivate an entity. So you can see reporting entity deactivation. So put in a name, just put in a date then as well. So we just click create. So let's say you, rather than having to contact the competent authority, there is a filing in the system that allows you to do this. So in here, Okay, so we go into the form. Again, it's pretty straightforward. So you can see here, you kind of have to state the reason why you want to deactivate. It's taking a little bit of time, but shouldn't be too much longer. Actually, one point while I'm waiting for that, and it's nothing to do with the reporting entity deactivation, it's to do with the primary user change. So, you know, the way we were showing that you put in the existing primary user and then you put in the new primary user details and you submit. Okay. Let's say that primary user is the primary user for 20 entities. Okay. That change does not carry across all 20 entities. Okay. So if it's, let's say, a secondary user, that secondary user will have to switch the entity. Remember up here? Okay. Log into that entity and then they go primary user change. So they end up having to do it. It is manual, but they would have to do it 20 times to change the primary user for those 20 entities. So just be aware of that. If you do make a primary user change, okay, it doesn't carry through for every entity that they've been assigned to. It's just for the one that you've been logged into the portal as. Okay, so very important point just to in relation to that. So with the reporting entity deactivation, bless you. I just press mute there. Okay, so here, okay, you want to just select one of these options here. Okay, report the entity termination date. Okay, and then you populate all the details in here. Okay, so let's just put in investments. Okay, and then we put in effectively our primary user details. This. And we put in all the relevant information in here as well. So it's okay. Select here. So then you can select the evidence. So again, you can upload a file here if necessary. Select all of this and validate and save. Okay. So when you're doing the deactivation, you just complete the form, you submit it, okay, and then once you have all that information in, submit to the competent authority. Can't remember, Andrew, in this case, do you have to approve it or is it automatic? Not sure, we need to check that, yeah. Yeah, we can check that there. So we can just validate and submit. Yes, no, but what I mean is once it's submitted to the competent authority, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but both of them could be secondary one.
Yes, yeah. So click submit. Okay. I hope I haven't deactivated myself. Okay, so yeah, according to this, it needs to be approved here. Okay, so that's the report entity deactivation. You can see the form there. All the forms are self-explanatory. Just go through it and submit the filing. Last one I want to show is in relation to, yeah, sorry. Yes, yeah, no, that's, yeah, when I saw the text, it suggested that. Okay, so we're just going to create one more filing here. Just going to do a FATCA nil filing. So let's just do nil filing there. So let's choose that, say 24. Okay, so let's click on that. So again, we go into our general information. Validate and save. Okay, so let's add our here or add our section. So let's expand our folder. So inside the reporting FI information, so there's a section in here, okay, that we're going to say, there's a question, is this a nil filing? Okay, so by default, it's set to no, but we're going to change it in this one. And yeah, so scroll it down, click on here. So here it is. If you see there, okay, does this return represent a nil report? Okay, so if we say yes, okay, with document type, okay, we say new data. Now, this docref ID, when it's a nil report, what we can do is this. You see up at the top of this form, there's a docref ID. Okay. If we copy that, okay, paste it in here, okay, but just make a change, just like add another digit, just so that the two docref IDs are unique. Okay. So you can copy one, paste it in, okay, but just add 2 digits there to it. Scroll it down, validate and save. Should be okay. Now, if you didn't adjust that second docref ID, then the system would say your docref IDs are the exact same. Okay, so that's why we make the change when we copy and paste it down. All right. So if you see here, right, I go validate and submit. That should submit. Yeah. So just go click submit. That submits then the nil filing. All right. So it's in the reporting FI section for FATCA. So in there, okay, you need to say this is a nil filing, and then you copy the docref ID from the top to underneath, and then you adjust the docref ID. You can just add a digit, just make a change, okay? The system will understand then, but don't just copy and paste and leave it the exact same. The system will stop it then from being submitted. Okay, so I'll just show you here, just on the filing. I'll just do that one again, actually. I just set up a different year. So, and I just remembered undocumented accounts as well, Andrew. So, do that. Okay, so let me just put in FACA there, and we'll just put in FACA nil, let's say 2. We'll just put in a different year. We'll use 2022. So you'll see here the steps at the start, exact same. Okay, so for general information, we leave it as new data. We're not going to change anything there with this one. So we'll leave it as new data there. It is in the reporting FI section that we make the change, okay, to state that it's a nil filing. So here, just expand the section here. Just add a section twice. It's fine. So here we have the reporting FI information. Okay, so if you remember from the last time, we choose the file or category, okay, but it's here. Does this return represent a nil report? So here we're going to select yes, and now we select new data. It now wants a Docker FID, so take the Docker FID at the top, paste it in, okay, and make a change. Just add a digit or two at the end, all right? And then once we've that in, we can validate and save. Now we can validate and submit. So that's how you do the fact and nil filing. So there's one other thing, or sorry, two other things we're going to show. One is in relation to undocumented accounts, okay? And then there's just one small feature. I don't think the competent authority are using it too much, but I'm still going to show it anyway. So click submit. Just going to set up a CRS filing here. So second. Okay. So we'll just create one more filing. Okay, so we're just going to put in CRS manual here. Okay, here we go. Twelve 2024. Click create. Okay. So CRS manual, we go into that file, see an option for undocumented account. So we go to our general information again. We're conscious of times that we get enough time for the Q&A. Okay, so let's just put in UK. So let's say a message contains new information. Click validate and save. The FI information now. Okay, so let's add a section, add the CRS report. We'll add the reporting FI information as well. So just going to wait a minute to see if there are much questions coming in the chat. Okay, doesn't look like there's a huge amount in there. Check. Okay, so let's validate and save. and then we'll add our account then. So here we add definitely get slower. So let's hope. Yeah. So you can see here it's an undocumented account. Okay, so I think it makes a difference which one of these is selected. Okay, so here be able to select. Okay, not sure why that's grayed out there. It shouldn't be. Let me just fill out the rest of it just in case. Okay, so here, and I'm not sure why it's been grayed out. Shouldn't be the case. If it's an undocumented account, you should be able to select yes there. Okay, and then the rest of the form you just fill out accordingly after that. All right, so it's just something probably on that virtual machine that's just stopped it maybe. But that's where you actually make the distinction for an undocumented account in the system. Okay, so in the account for CRS, in the account at the top, there's an option for undocumented account. Select yes, and you can fill out the relevant details behind that. And then you should be able to just submit the file after that. Then let me just double check. So you selected the Bahamas. Ah, yeah, that's it. Sorry. Hang on. Let me just save as draft there. That's why it's grayed out. Yeah, as the receiving country, yeah, that was my mistake there at the start. Just change that to Bahamas, just quickly jump back in and make sure we can select yes on that then. Yeah, just go into general information here. Just want to double check if that activates and then I'll come back to this then. But looking at the chat, I don't think there was too many questions online, but that could change once this finishes. So go to edit here and just see. Yeah, that's it. Okay. So let me just validate and save that. Just run back through that again. So the mistake I made was right at the very start. Okay, so you need to set the receiving country to be Bahamas. Okay, once you do that, okay. So one other thing to watch out for there, say put in the ID as well. So you see here, the general information, Bahamas, put in the company ID there. It's not mandatory field, but I think put in your ID number there. Okay. Then validate and save. So the FI information is the same, but on the account information, you now be able to select the undocumented account. Okay. So if I go in here, yeah, and you see undocumented account. Now you're able to select it. So the big thing is at the start. That was my own mistake. Select Bahamas, okay, and then once you select Bahamas as the receiving country, okay, in the account, now you're able to click on your undocumented account option then. So, very last thing, Andrew, I know you said you haven't used it too much, but just to point it out, to explain what it is, the regulatory hub is like a repository that the competent authority could load things like guides or sample files into for an FI user to download. So personally, I think it hasn't been utilized enough for the number of jurisdictions. Where I've seen it being used, where it's actually quite useful, is in here. You might have XML sample files. The authority would upload some sample files, and all you can do is just download them. You can't edit them kind of inside the repository here. So there could be things like sample files in here, guides in here, select them and download them to your own drive then. Okay, that's what you can do. That's its entire function. Okay, you can't create anything, you can't upload anything. It's totally from the competent authorities aside that they could put material in here for you to download. Okay, that's pretty much the demo taken care of. I'm just going to very quickly check the chat, see if there's any questions. I didn't really see too many coming in. There was a few comments more about the screens, but looking down through it, I don't see anything that's sitting there. So while, if maybe in case anybody is typing something in, does anybody here from the floor have any questions? Oh, okay. Is the CRS file summary a requirement?
No.
No.
Yeah, undocumented.
Yes. You want to see that one?
Documented account. CRS OECD terminology. But what it means is it applies to specific accounts that are wholesale. Wholesale. And it's what is referred to as pre-existing accounts, because all new accounts should have a self-certification. So undocumented accounts speak to accounts where the tax, where the self-certification, in other words, the tax residency, is not clarified and known. So, that's a new reporting by the portal that will be available next week, Monday, when the portal opens. Further guidance will be posted when we send the notice around to remind financial institutions what exactly is. But all new accounts in recent years, that goes back to like 2015, and certain conditions apply. So that basically is what.
Yeah.
Do we have any other questions?
Yeah, there's a couple of questions here just come in. I'm just going to pull this up. So I know the question has come in on the chat, so I'll just copy and paste this into the chat. So just bear with me, everybody. Okay. So just the question, in filing a corrected CRS submission using the XML upload function, kindly confirm what needs to be changed in the XML form. So you do need to add this specific field, the core docref ID. So on the regular submission, you would have the docref ID, but when it's a corrected one, you do need to add this core docref ID into the XML file. Okay, so pasted that into the chat on the
Question.
Times, in the Teams. Okay. Where can we get a copy of the recording? I think you published
Posted. It'll be posted on the tax website.
Yeah. Just put that in there.
www.taxreporting.finance.gov.bs.
finance, is that it there, Andrew? Yeah. .gov.bs. Yeah. Both.
Videos for the last 5 years are also posted there.
Yes.
You mentioned the trustee FI number and code,
Yeah.
and name and code.
Yeah.
The example that you use, the FI, which is the underlying company. If you have the trustee FI acting as a sponsor,
Got
the example that you use is that investment, and when he added the trustee document and trust, he uses that trust, LTD, correct? And then when we do that, I use the code of the underlying company, not the trustee.
Well, are you speaking de facto or CRS? Because you mentioned sponsored. You mentioned the word
I think
sponsor.
that I'm using the example here, the underlying company, the TTT.
Right. So the
This
trustee,
particular case, reference to the three codes, CRS, FATCA, and CBC, right? Not necessarily one of them.
Yeah.
well,
It was.
FATCA is different though. Because
Correct.
FATCA is filed through the XML.
Correct.
Using sponsored entities. That's done through an XML file. So if you're talking CRS,
No,
PDT,
but FATCA can do manual.
yeah, but typically it's done through XML.
Yeah.
So what exactly?
My question is, if the FI code should be linked to the sponsor, the holding vehicle, or the other. Just verifying that when you post the two fields, I'm putting the correct FI code and the correct FI name.
Or which one is relevant in your case?
For each sponsor.
Oh, that's
acting
what you-
as a sponsoring.
That's what you would insert then.
Okay. I'm making it.
Okay, answer the question about the permit and that our primary use signed. Okay, that's fine. Yeah.
So that answered itself.
Yeah.
Okay.
I hope so.
So we remind listeners and financial institutions to consult the CRS guidance. The IRS website, also has frequently asked questions. And then the OEC manual on reporting obligations. So that wasn't really a topic. That manual is about maybe 2,000 pages. But, there are people, that have the time and the amount of coffee that is required to read it. But it's actually broken in sections, so you don't have to read the whole document. But it certainly outlines the reporting obligations and can address, some of the questions that you're asking that are really beyond the scope of this presentation. On behalf of the Bahamas Competent Authority for AUI reporting, we thank you for taking the time to attend this event. Hopefully the session was helpful in understanding how to use the portal. We acknowledge our colleagues from Ministry of Finance on the call. We thank Alan from Technology for flying down all the way from Maryland to deliver in person this year. Thank you.
Thanks very much, everybody.